see the big story debuting in mid-October, The Streak. This year's Big Ten preseason volleyball poll released earlier in the week, and there are some serious heavy hitters up front. Defending league champ, national runner-up Nebraska leading the way. Wisconsin and Penn State ranked second and third, respectively. Purdue and Minnesota round out the top five, while newcomer Oregon, fresh off back-to-back Elite Eight showings, lands at number 6. I am joined now by Elena Shklyar Holly McPeak. These two punching the time clock and working overtime on Monday and Tuesday with our coverage of Big Ten Volleyball Media Days. We got to hear from the Huskers, got to hear from John Cook. And Holly, I thought it was fascinating because as much hype is behind this team right now, John Cook said, just remember, there have been years just like this when preseason we've been picked to win it all, haven't even made the Final Four. But conversely, there have been years when no one was talking about us and we got all the way to the national championship game.
It's true. Just because you have the best team on paper doesn't mean you're going to win it all. It's who's the best team as a group, who battles together the best.
And this team has a target on their back right now. They also have a bit of a chip on their shoulder after last season. So John Cook saying that, I feel like just adds some fuel to the fire because everyone is picking them right now as their number one in the Big Ten, possibly nationally as well. So we'll see how they end up playing.
I also asked him a little bit about chemistry because it's fascinating. You have 5 players on the all Big Ten preseason team. Lindsey Krause, not one of them. Really only because she was injured last year, and then you bring in a transfer in former Big Ten Player of the Year, Taylor Landfair. Sure, it's a problem that most coaches would love to have too much talent, but figuring out who plays where and with just one ball to go around is not an easy job.
Sometimes when you have so much talent like that and you're fighting for positions, it can affect the culture of a program. But we got to speak to Kennedy Orr and Lindsey Krause about it, and they both were so well-spoken about the headspace of where this team is at right now, that they just want to win, that they want to play together as a team. And I think when you have all of that talent, adding Taylor Landfair to that program, it's just going to make them stronger.
But you also have superstars battling for the same position. So when that happens, how can it affect the culture? It's going to be interesting to watch.
There are superstars most certainly in other places, like in Madison, reigning Big Ten and AVCA Player of the Year Sarah Franklin returns. Kelly Sheffield has a loaded team once again. And Holly, I thought it was fascinating. The West Coast schools, we'll get more into them in a second, but when asked about the difference, they all talked about size and strength, and almost all of them mentioned specifically the Wisconsin lineup.
Well, Kelly Sheffield said it best. He said, we play bully volleyball, and they do. With their size and physicality, they intimidate and really put a lot of pressure on their opponents. But I'll tell you, Sarah Franklin, the AVCA Player of the Year, came back so fit and motivated this year. She looks the best I've ever seen her.
Absolutely. We were talking about that. Sarah looks so strong. She spent some time in the USA Volleyball gym this past summer, and it was just so impressive to see her in that gym and what she can do. They have so much size and strength on this Wisconsin volleyball team, but they also have such a high volleyball IQ, and I think that's what makes them so difficult to play.
And there's no doubt recent history goes into all these preseason polls and returning rosters as well. Wisconsin, of course, part of the Final Four last year. Nebraska, part of the national championship. But you look at depth and talent league-wide, and I don't think any of us would be surprised if a handful of other teams contended with the Badgers and with the Huskers for the Big Ten championship. If you had to pick one, Elena, where would you go?
I'm going to pick that team that just landed 4th on the Big Ten preseason poll, and that's going to be Purdue. I'm a huge fan of Purdue just because of the style of volleyball that they play. They just are so aggressive. They're all out. They have some high-flying players with Eva Hudson and Chloe Chacoin. I really think they can upset some teams this season.
Do I have to pick a team? I think there's a handful of teams that can battle. A lot of teams battled injuries last year, so now they're going to be at full strength. I think there's so many, I would say 5 or 6 competitive programs that can surprise a bunch of teams.
Now, I would even throw teams that didn't make the NCAA tournament last year, like Indiana, into the mix with what Steve Aird returns and the outstanding recruiting classes that he's had the last couple of years. There are a lot of teams in this mix that people may not be discussing as much as Nebraska and Wisconsin that perhaps we're talking a little bit more about when we get to mid and late October. We would be remiss, of course, not to touch on the 4 new additions. We got to meet USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon, get inside with their coaches and with their players. And Holly, I thought it was fascinating. Every single one of their representatives not just talked about how excited they were, but how thankful they were to be part of this conference.
Well, they're incredibly grateful for this opportunity. Big Ten Network, you can tell how much they love this sport. So it's a fantastic opportunity, and the West Coast schools are excited to show off their style. It's different. It's going to be fun to watch.
I think we heard the word gratitude the last couple of days at Big Ten Media Days by many different players on many different teams, especially those 4 new teams. They're just so thankful to be here, be part of this conference, and they're ready to show Big Ten what they have, and I can't wait to see those teams compete.
All right, finally, as we wrap things up, you guys got to do all the interviews. 36 student athletes joined you on the other side of our studio for some great conversations. How impressive are these young women, some sophomores at the age of 19, able to handle themselves in that fashion off the volleyball court and inside a television studio, which is not their most comfort space?
I just think about some of those girls. They're like 19 years old on live television. I don't know if when I was 19 if I could form a coherent sentence if I knew a camera was on me. So I was just wildly impressed with how well-spoken they were and just how excited they were to be here and how grateful for the entire experience.
Well, volleyball players are known to always be smart. They always win the GPA award on campus, and you can tell they're a very well-spoken group, and it was fun to get to know them.
We thank all the schools for joining us, all the student athletes, and of course, wishing them all the best. For Holly McPeak and Elena Shklyar, always good to talk Big Ten volleyball. The season starts just 3.5 short weeks from now.